I recently made the difficult decision to cut ties with my toxic mother to protect my wife and our 5 children. The breaking point came when she threatened legal action for grandparents' rights, prompting me to expose her abusive behavior to our entire family. I'm 41 years old, happily married for 2 decades. Both my wife and I come from fractured, chaotic families. Her parents were divorced alcoholics, and my parents' violent split led my father to flee several states away, while my mother remained a volatile presence in my life. My mother's abuse towards me began after my parents' divorce, escalating to physical and emotional torment. At 16, she kicked me out, leaving me homeless and desperate. I found shelter in a precarious situation, forced into a traumatic experience simply to have a roof over my head. By 18, I secured stable employment and began rebuilding my life from scratch. Despite our challenging backgrounds, my wife and I have worked tirelessly to be exemplary parents and spouses. She coaches sports and I serve as a scoutmaster with the Boy Scouts of America. Our children are thriving physically and emotionally, a testament to our dedication and hard work. Despite our efforts to maintain family unity, my mother remained a constant source of stress and pain. For nearly 2 decades, I tried to include her in our lives with strict boundaries. She appeared relatively stable during this time, allowing for occasional, monitored contact with my children. However, everything changed dramatically when her second husband left her. In the aftermath, she spiraled into extreme cruelty and erratic behavior, involving herself in legal battles and alienating herself from large parts of her family. Realizing the danger her behavior posed to my own family, I took action earlier this year. In a carefully worded letter, I respectfully asked her to reassess her conduct towards us. Instead of considering my plea, she responded with vitriol, hurling insults and accusations at me before escalating to abusive behavior towards my wife. In response, I blocked her contact and informed her via email that I needed distance until she sought therapy or resolved her issues with her divorce mediator. For 6 months, there was a tense calm until recently, when she unexpectedly demanded visitation rights with my children under threat of legal action. This manipulation and intimidation tactic is typical of her behavior, a relentless pursuit of control and dominance. Her threat of legal action, while not yet materialized, serves as a stark reminder of her willingness to weaponize the legal system to further her own agenda. As someone who works in the legal field, I understand the implications of her threats. However, this situation transcends legalities. It is about protecting my family from her toxic influence. Her actions resemble those of a schoolyard bully who, when confronted, intensifies their harassment rather than backing down. The depth of her disregard for my children's well-being is evidenced by past attempts to poison their minds against their grandfather during her previous conflicts. In confronting this situation, I am reminded of the trauma she inflicted upon me as a child and the lifelong scars it left behind. My decision to sever ties with her is not taken lightly, but is necessary to shield my wife and children from further harm. It is a step towards breaking the cycle of abuse and creating a safe, nurturing environment for my family, one where love and support, not fear and manipulation, define our relationships. While grabbing us by the arms and pulling us out of the store, she made it clear what she could do with family court. This morning I had a literal hyperventilating panic attack on the floor of my office. Throughout this ordeal, I have strived to be respectful, mature, and make good decisions. My wife and I have an extremely secure marriage, and she supports me 100% through all of this. Yet, I find myself wishing my mother would just die already and leave me alone. She's an inescapable bully who won't stop until she's proven she can hurt someone. I don't care what she's experienced in her life, I just need to be away from her. This is my off-my-chest story. I've been living with this shame, fear, and lingering self-hatred for over 30 years, while trying to be a super dad and a great career man. Today I called a local family law practice for a referral. I'm going to ask them to send a demand letter to her to back off. But look at what this has come to. I have to shell out money from my own pocket to protect myself and my kids from my insane mother. Ironically, the money I'll spend on the lawyer was earmarked for my kids to go to summer camp. Thank you for letting me share my story. Just typing it out helps. No comments. Oop, is there a legal precedent that supports her threats in this area? New York does allow grandparents to sue for custody, but it would turn into a prolonged legal fight, costing me a lot of money and aggravation. In general, the process is the punishment. I had to deal with family court, CPS, and cops when I was 10 and my parents were divorcing. If you want to see me pass out, drag me back to family court. Oop, does your mother have the financial means to sue for grandparents' rights? I've seen this woman use the courts to destroy my father for over 10 years. The answer is, who knows? I'll just have to wait for a court summons to see what she will do. Encore, I'm extremely sad to read this. If she sues, it might expose 40 years of her horrors in court. You're here to get it off your chest, and you don't deserve this. You are paying for being a good person. May life repay you and your mom. All my vibes are for you. United man, you should have plenty of proof to get a restraining order. Don't worry about her getting grandparents' rights. She would need a well-established relationship with the children, which doesn't sound like the case. Change your number and file a restraining order. If they deny it, issue a no trespassing letter. If she violates it, you can get a restraining order. Use her own words against her and tell her she's welcome to take you to court but not to contact you otherwise. Johnny Skidmarks, change your phone number and ghost her completely. Do not reply to anything she does to contact you. The courts won't side with her. She sounds completely crazy. Update. I posted this on Thursday when I was in turmoil. Since then, I've calmed down and talked it over with important people in my life. First, I'd like to thank everyone for their support and insights. Many shared their own experiences, and I appreciate it. I now understand that I'm not the only person with a domineering, selfish, easily enraged parent. To those who blame me for being a victim, I want to use strong language, but I'll just ask you to think about how fortunate your life has been. On to the update. Only 2 states, California and New York, have codified grandparents' rights, and I live in New York. A grandparent doesn't have an automatic right to access grandchildren, but has automatic standing to file a petition in family court. The petition can be squashed, but they can file it. I conferred with a family law attorney on Friday. He explained that a grandparent has standing to file a petition based on a pre-existing relationship with the grandchildren, but it's unlikely she would overcome the desires of 2 married parents who are both exercising their judgment for their children's health and safety. He explained that in New York, our desire to terminate a relationship would most likely be upheld in court. However, if we introduce specific actions she's exhibited over the years, we would likely prevail. We've already restricted contact to about once per month, and courts rarely order more than that. I considered a restraining order, but it's not easy to get unless there's a facilitating act of domestic violence. Harassment by words alone doesn't qualify. However, if she causes disorderly acts, that could trigger an order if documented by police. The attorney recommended sending a private cease and desist via certified mail and email. I wrote a 2-page brutal takedown to blow off steam and document my concerns. I sent it on Friday and publicly scorched the earth by informing every family member about her abuse and my decision to cut her off. My reasoning was simple: her abuse thrives in silence. For 30 years, people have excused her behavior. Last year, she tried to run over my stepfather with her car and crashed into his business. Instead of calling the police, my sister hid her away, and my stepfather covered up the damage. This is what happens in families dealing with a crazy person. By Friday afternoon, my mother sent emails asking me to stop attacking her and indicated she would abandon legal efforts for visitation. This was a relief, but I was almost looking forward to exposing her in court. The fallout with my extended family is likely severe and permanent, but my wife and I have decided to proceed. We'll have holidays by ourselves if the family can't support us. In 1991, my mother conducted a vicious divorce against my father, seeking to destroy him. My grandparents on his side sought guaranteed visitation, but my mother litigated against it, and the court ruled she had the sole decision-making power. Now, 35 years later, she tries to use changes in the law to assert grandparents' rights. The irony is astounding. I consulted with a family law attorney on Friday, who helped me understand the situation and craft a strategy. He was kind enough not to require a retainer until I'm served with legal papers. The attorney explained that the grandparent does have standing to file a petition based on a pre-existing relationship with the grandchildren, but she would most likely not be able to overcome the wishes of 2 married parents who are both exercising their judgment for the health and safety of their children. In New York, our simple desire to terminate a relationship would likely be challenged in court. However, by introducing specific actions she's exhibited over the last few years, such as familial alienation, inappropriate adult humor near children, uncontrollable anger, hoarding of house cats, and dangerous operation of a motor vehicle, we would likely prevail in a court setting. The attorney noted that our pre-existing restrictions on contact, limiting interactions to about once per month, are beneficial. He mentioned that in his experience, he had never seen a court order for grandparent visitation more frequent than once a month, for an hour per session. I acknowledged that the worst-case scenario would likely be maintaining the current supervised status quo. I also asked about obtaining a restraining order, and learned that it is not as straightforward as some Reddit attorneys suggested. An order of protection requires an accompanying act of domestic violence. Since I've only been harassed and alarmed by words, I cannot be granted a restraining order. However, if my mother were to cause disorderly acts, such as causing a disturbance at my house, that could potentially trigger an order, but only if I document it by having the police file a report. The attorney recommended sending a private cease and desist letter to my mother via certified mail and email. I decided to write a thorough 2-page letter to address my concerns and to get ahead of any potential legal maneuvering on her part. On Friday, I sent this letter via email and certified mail. Additionally, I decided to publicly share the situation to apply social pressure. I informed every member of my extended family, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, my stepfather, and my father about what was happening, detailing my mother's abuse and my decision to cut her off for the welfare of my family. My reasoning was that my mother's abuse has thrived behind closed doors and in embarrassed silence for 30 years. For example, last year my mother got so angry at my stepfather that she tried to run him over with her car, then crashed it into the front door of his business while screaming and ranting. Instead of calling the police or an ambulance, my sister quickly drove her away to avoid arrest, and my stepfather discreetly covered the damage. This kind of enabling behavior is typical in families dealing with a volatile member. By Friday afternoon, my mother got the message and sent me emails asking me to stop attacking her and maligning her to the family. She indicated that she would abandon any legal efforts to seek visitation with my children. While this was a relief, I was almost looking forward to describing her antics in a public forum at court. The fallout and damage to my extended family are likely severe and permanent, but my wife and I have decided this is the direction we need to go for our family's well-being. We are prepared to spend holidays alone if necessary. Finally, I want to highlight a point from 1991 when my mother conducted a vicious divorce against my father. She specifically litigated to keep us, her children, away from our paternal grandparents, asserting in court that she had the sole decision-making power as the custodial mother. The court ruled in her favor, and my grandparents were unable to see us outside of my father's visitation times. The law in New York changed in 2000 to grant grandparents rights, but it was too late to benefit my grandparents. The audacity of my mother to now try to use the changes in the law to assert her own visitation rights is astonishing. The idea that grandparents should have visitation rights against both parents' wishes was too much for me to bear. That alone made me say, no way, not happening under my watch. So, here's the update. It's long-winded, but it feels good to type this out. I'm finally able to unburden the unbearable shame and embarrassment of what happened to me to my family members. I won't allow myself to be ignored anymore. I'm 41, and my selfish, insane baby boomer mother, who is in her mid-70s, has no power over me anymore. I'm sick and tired of bottling this up. Anyone who doesn't like it can go suck an egg. I deserve to have loyal and faithful people in my life. Comments. Eskil isn't her case now public record. If she believes that only custodial parents should dictate a child's relationship with extended family, isn't that something a lawyer can look up and use? I have started the FOIL request at the family court where the divorce was adjudicated. However, this will likely take months to get the records. I may read them just to more fully understand my family's history. Practical_chess_2313 Man, I am so unbelievably glad that you stood up for yourself and that you and your wife are united in standing up to your extended family. That's not easy to do. Nobody deserves to be treated like that, but abusers are so good at making you believe that you're the one exception. Marukin won exactly, and good job, op. From my own personal experience, it can be difficult to cut a toxic, abusive person out of your life. So many people follow the same path as their parents. It makes me happy to hear that you are raising your children in the complete opposite way from how she raised you. By limiting contact and going no contact, you are not only protecting yourself but also your children. No one should have to endure that, and I'm so sorry you did. Be proud that you and your wife are ending that cycle. Berlin_black_T_N_New York. The burden of proof for a TRO is high. Why do so many jump to thinking they give these out freely? You wouldn't want a system that allows that. Being made uncomfortable is not grounds for a TRO. In a dysfunctional family where abuse is chronic and lifelong but rarely enough to cause arrest, people who exhibit controlling and abusive behavior know what they can and cannot get away with legally. In most cases, they have enablers who hide behind their silence and shame. It is frustrating. Unless minors witness the behavior, CPS acts quickly. TROs are usually granted then. Parents can be faulted for failure to protect if they do not shield the children from a relative's behavior. The culture has changed since the 80s and 90s. What matters now is the future. Protect your children and go to therapy for yourself. Intergenerational trauma stops with you, and you are taking steps to do that. But you also have to heal yourself, the child you were that was not heard, loved, valued, or protected by your primary caregiver, your mom. It will take hard work and some time. But if you take therapy seriously, it will heal you and help you become the healthiest version of yourself as a parent. You will be mentally free. G_to_you_knitted underscore Yeti, this batshit insane woman, forced me to see my own father at a McDonald's when we were kids for 2 hours every 2 weeks as per the court order, while she waited outside in a running car. I'm trying to understand how the courts only granted the father 2 hours per fortnight visitation. On what grounds? Fatigue underscore error mom probably made up a lot of BS that made the dad sound abusive and uncaring, etc. Text underscore Evie, I dated a guy who had an ex like that. Even worse, it wasn't regular visits, she'd just phone with 1 hour's notice, and if he wasn't there, she'd tell the kids he didn't love them enough. It took him years and thousands of dollars to sort out the court custody. Sadly, it took a toll on our relationship. It was hard to be second best to his ex's crazy antics, and we had to keep our relationship secret, or she'd cut him off. He did put his kids first, but the frequent canceled dates were too much. Her fault, really. As a friend of his, though, I was pleased when it was all finalized and to see him settled with a nice girlfriend now. Mount underscore Guava underscore 2877 cases like that are why co-parenting apps are a godsend. No more lies about who agreed to do what, or when it's all documented and timestamped.